My jaw dropped when I checked the security cam and saw Patricia Henderson, the HOA president, lounging half-naked in my private sauna, acting like she'd booked a five-star resort. She wasn't sneaking, wrapped in a towel, sipping rose from the bottle, cucumber slices on her eyes. She hummed to my meditation playlist as if she owned the cedar walls. Then, in a moment of pure gall, she whispered into her phone, "He'll never know his place is basically community property." That was when I decided she'd learn what private meant, preferably in a haze of skunk stench. 3 weeks earlier, I'd been savoring a quiet evening on my back deck, the kind I built this house for. I'm David Ramsey, a war vet who bought this plot on the edge of Oak Creek's HOA turf to escape their petty rules. My property is legally exempt, certified, notarized, and, after a drunken bet, tattooed as a joke on my calf. I'd crafted a personal sauna nestled behind cedars, 10 yards from my fence, with my own hands, a sanctuary for managing PTSD and the clamor of civilian life. The sauna was more than wood and heat. It was where I pieced myself back together after tours in combat zones, where the silence drowned out the echoes of mortars and the anxiety of crowded streets. So when I saw Patricia prowling my perimeter with binoculars and a clipboard, her shadows slicing through the dusk, I braced for trouble. She'd targeted me before. First, my amber LED porch lights deemed a disruption to aesthetic harmony. I flashed my exemption papers. She left a violation notice in my mailbox, a passive-aggressive paper cut. Then she smeared me at an HOA meeting as a hostile recluse for skipping her tofu slider barbecue, where she lectured kids on lawn care like it was a military briefing. Her boldest stunt, hiring landscapers to trim my heritage oak for silhouette violations, claiming its branches offended the neighborhood skyline. I threatened a lawsuit, citing the tree's 150-year history. She relented, but her smirk said she'd be back for the sauna. I'd gone overboard: permits, zoning letters, fire inspections, a private property, no entry sign bolted to the door. Nothing deterred her. The trouble sparked with a motion sensor alert while I was grocery shopping, my cart half full of coffee and frozen pizza. Expecting a raccoon, I opened the feed and froze. Patricia, in a fluffy towel, tiptoed into my sauna, set up a Bluetooth speaker blaring New Age drivel, and uncorked a bottle of rose, reclining like a pampered queen. "He'll never know," she said to her phone, her tone casual, like this was routine. The implication hit like a gut punch. This wasn't her first trespass. I watched, stunned, as she lounged for 40 minutes, her bare feet propped on the cedar bench, scrolling her phone, exiting with a half-empty bottle, strolling off as if it were her backyard. Rage surged, not just for the invasion, but her entitlement, her assumption she could claim my refuge. I'd survived war zones, dodging bullets and bombs. Now my sanctuary, my shield against PTSD's relentless grip, was her personal spa. That night, I couldn't sleep, replaying the footage on a loop, her smug grin, her flippant community property jab burned. I needed a response, not a shouting match or a lawsuit, but something poetic, humiliating, unforgettable, something that would make her feel the violation she'd inflicted. I called Daniel, a wildlife control buddy who'd once cleared skunks from under my deck. "Still got those scent diffusers?" I asked, explaining Patricia's stunt. He laughed until he wheezed. "You're skunk trapping her?" "No," I said, "I'm teaching her what boundaries smell like." By week's end, I had a non-toxic coyote-repelling skunk scent diffuser, its odor so violent it could clear a room. Testing it in my garage was a mistake. I fled for an hour, eyes watering, but it was perfect, mimicking a skunk's reek without harm. I wired it discreetly under the sauna bench, synced to a remote phone trigger, upgraded the cameras with night vision, and tuned the motion sensor to detect only human movement. A new auto-close door and reinforced lock ensured she'd be trapped just long enough to marinate in her mistake. I waited, betting her shamelessness would draw her back like a moth to a flame. The next morning, a violation notice was taped to my door, citing my sauna's private property sign as a visual disturbance, complete with a red-circled photo like evidence from a crime scene. I stood barefoot, coffee in hand, livid. She'd defiled my haven and dared to fine me for protecting it. I crumpled the notice and tossed it, my resolve hardening. That evening, I attended the HOA meeting in their musty clubhouse, not for kicks, but to set the stage. Patricia, flanked by her cronies, radiated smugness, her clipboard a scepter. During new business, I stood, tablet in hand, and played the footage. Patricia sneaking onto my property, unlocking my sauna, lounging with wine, boasting my home was community property. The room gasped. Someone choked on sparkling water. That's out of context, she stammered, her face reddening. I thought it was a shared amenity. A locked sauna behind a privacy fence, I shot back, voice steady. Her excuses, vague signage, unclear lines, fell flat. Harold, a board member who usually napped through meetings, roared, "That's trespassing." Patricia's ally, Lorraine, fidgeted, her loyalty wavering. The board, visibly shaken, promised to investigate, but Patricia's credibility teetered like her flamingo lawn ornaments in a storm. I returned home and perfected the trap, a camera hidden in the vent, a stronger lock, a diffuser tested to unleash its stench in seconds. I added a subtle pressure sensor under the bench to confirm her presence, ensuring no accidental triggers. 2 days later, the alert pinged while I scrambled eggs in the kitchen. Patricia, in a towel and a green face mask, slunk through my cedars, her slippers flapping as she scanned for witnesses. She slipped into the sauna, sighing like she'd entered nirvana, setting up her wine and a playlist labeled Zen Vibes. I let her settle, her arrogance almost hypnotic, then hit the trigger. 5 seconds in, she wrinkled her nose. At 10, she frowned, sniffing. At 15, she gagged, bolting upright, screaming as the synthetic skunk stench filled the air. The steamy door, slick with condensation, stuck, her tulle slipping as she pounded the glass, her mask oozing down her face like a horror flick. She wrestled the latch, bursting out like a cannonball, shrieking, sprinting barefoot across my yard, a cucumber-smeared banshee, arms flailing, dignity in tatters. My cameras captured every angle, front, side, interior. Neighbor Tom, watering his roses, filmed her frantic dash, texting me, "Better than cable, man." Patricia called 911, ranting about a chemical assault. 2 officers arrived as I stepped outside, calm but ready. She stood in my yard, half-clothed, reeking of faux skunk, accusing me of poisoning her. I showed the footage, her trespass, her whine, her triggering the diffuser. One officer bit his lip to stifle a laugh. The other cleared his throat. "You entered private property, ma'am," he said. "Lucky it wasn't a real skunk." They issued a trespassing warning and told her to take it up with the HOA. She stormed off, towel draped over her head like a disgraced starlet, her pride as battered as her face mask. I'm David Ramsey, 42, who bought this 5-acre plot on Austin's outskirts for peace after 3 tours in combat zones, raised by a welder and a nurse in a small Texas town. I learned resilience and precision, but war left scars, PTSD that flares in crowds, loud noises, or unexpected intrusions. My sauna, legally exempt from Oak Creek's HOA, was my lifeline, a cedar-scented cocoon where I could breathe, reset, and silence the echoes of mortars and chaos. Yet Patricia, with her clipboard and entitlement, had defiled it, turning my refuge into her playground. By noon the next day, Tom's video, dubbed Steam Room Patricia, exploded on the neighborhood Facebook group, racking up 2 million TikTok views within hours. Her scream was auto-tuned into a viral remix, captioned "Private property means private" in neon over her panicked face. Local teens reenacted her sprint at the clubhouse, towels and masks in tow, while a radio skit mocked her detox center claim. Patricia's response was a Comic Sans flyer stuffed in mailboxes, alleging she was lured into a toxic attack that caused memory loss and required a neurological cleanse. It was laughed off as sci-fi nonsense. Even her ally, Lorraine, quit the board, citing cedar wood allergies. I dug deeper, collecting neighbor stories. Harold, a widower, shared how Patricia fined him $100 for a holiday wreath honoring his late wife, calling it non-compliant. Susan, 2 doors down, was cited for her porch swing's unregulated noise in the breeze. A family faced a $50 fine for leaving birthday balloons on their mailbox past 24 hours. Clara, a retired librarian, was warned for unapproved zinnias in her garden. Greg's menacing mailbox drew a $75 penalty. Each tale fueled my resolve. This wasn't just about my sauna. It was about a neighborhood suffocating under Patricia's reign. With Susan's banana bread and Harold's pot roast, I rallied support for an emergency HOA meeting, leveraging the bylaw's provision for resident-backed sessions. Neighbors, emboldened by the viral video, signed on, their frustration boiling over years of petty citations. The meeting, held in the clubhouse's stale air, was electric. Patricia, in a too-tight blazer, opened with a tirade about misinformation and slander, but her voice wavered as eyes rolled. I stood, dossier in hand, a binder of footage, complaints, and Patricia's error-riddled cease and desist letter, which drew bored laughter. I played the sauna video, her trespass, her whine, her community property boast. The room gasped. Lorraine sank in her seat. Then neighbors spoke. Harold, voice trembling, read his wreath citation. Susan played audio of Patricia's Ivy rant during her Zoom call. The balloon family showed their notice taped to a gift box. Clara recounted her zinnia fine. Greg, his mailbox penalty. The flood of grievances, years of minor humiliations, stunned the board. Even Patricia's staunchest defender, Lorraine, looked shaken. The vote was unanimous. Patricia was ousted as HOA president, effective immediately. Ray, a retired firefighter who once saved a raccoon with a hose and Pop-Tarts, took over. Patricia hurled her clipboard to the floor, hissing about lawsuits, and stormed out, her exit punctuated by a thudding door. The room erupted in cheers. Harold clapped, eyes wet. The fallout was seismic. Patricia's flyer became a meme, her detox claim mocked in a local radio skit. She filed a county complaint, calling my sauna a hazardous zone, but my permits, zoning letters, and non-toxic diffuser documentation shut it down. Inspector Reggie, chuckling, called it the year's most bizarre complaint, surpassed only by a windshield deemed hypnotic. Patricia's restraining order attempt, citing environmental stimuli, was laughed out of court, the clerk warning her against baseless filings. Reddit's Skunk Avenger post exploded with screenshots of her flyer and cease and desist letter, sparking nationwide HOA horror stories. Comments dubbed me a revolutionary, urging others to fight petty tyrants. Patricia retaliated with vandalism, smeared oil on the sauna window, a tampered lock, a rotten tomato splattered on the cedar wall, its stench mingling with the wood. I countered with motion-activated spotlights, a second fence layer, and a midnight dog bark alarm that sent her hooded figure scrambling, caught on my new hidden cam. Her attempts ceased, her energy or nerve depleted. Her house hit the market. No open house, just a stark, for sale sign in her manicured lawn, irony thick as the cedar scent in my sauna. At the spring block party, Ray toasted sanity and skunks. Neighbors gifted a victory mist candle, a playful nod to my trap. Kids raced with glow sticks, dogs roamed free, music played past curfew. No fines, no complaints. Clara's zinnias bloomed. Greg's mailbox stood proud. Harold hung a new wreath. Patricia moved her SUV, vanishing under dawn's cover, her blinds shut, mail piled high. I sat in my sauna, cedar peace restored, a new sign carved in bold red. Trespassers will be skunked. Stars gleamed above. My haven stood firm, proof that boundaries, not battles, win wars. In a community once silenced, freedom roars. Patricia, defeated and ostracized, finally moved away, leaving Oak Creek to its newfound peace. The HOA, under Ray's sensible leadership, flourished. The sauna remained my sanctuary, a reminder of the day I stood up not just for myself, but for everyone oppressed by petty tyranny. And every now and then, when the wind was just right, a faint, lingering scent of skunk would drift through the neighborhood, a fragrant echo of justice served.